Welcome to the Food Junkies Podcast. Here, we aim to provide you with the experience, strength, and hope of professionals actively working on the front lines in the field of food addiction. The purpose of our show is to educate you, the listener, and increase overall awareness about food addiction as a disease with abstinence as the solution. Here, we talk about all things recovery. Most importantly, how to thrive rather than just survive. So stay positive, make a change for yourself, tell others about your change, and hopefully the message will spread. On today's episode, we're talking to Johnathan Cranford. He's the author of the book, The Sugar Demons, An Addict's Guide to Conquering Sugar Addiction. Johnathan is a former USA boxing coach and current certified CrossFit trainer. He has over 20 years of experience in the fitness industry. He also has spent that equal amount of time battling his sugar addiction. Today, we cover some of the traps that can lead to disordered eating behaviors in the fitness industry, how he fuels his CrossFit workouts now, some of the unique struggles that men experience with sugar addiction, and his thoughts on alcohol. Johnathan shares his discoveries and strategies that he found critical in breaking the cycle of his sugar addiction. And now he has that feeling of freedom with his food again. There is not one way to recover. Abstinence from the drug is key. But today, Johnathan shares his journey about what worked for him. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hi, welcome. Johnathan Cranford is our guest today. And we're just going to jump right in, Johnathan, because we know you're busy. It's been a long day and we don't want to keep you too long for sure. But we're super excited because we've both read your book. I have your workbook and we just really want to know more from you. We want our listeners to hear from you why you think that's so important. So the first question I have for you, though, is can you share your story of sugar addiction with us? You know, when and what was your aha moment in all of that you realize that this is possibly what's going on? Can you just kind of give us a brief recap of that story?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. First of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you guys having me on your show. And so I'm a sugar addict and a binge eater. I've been, I guess, about the age of 37 is when I sort of figured it out for myself. The term sugar addiction wasn't really thrown around that much, I don't think, back then. That was about 6 years ago. My aha moment, I can tell you very specifically when this happened. I was staring into my kitchen trash can and I was looking at 2 empty pints of ice cream. And this was, like Haagen-Dazs or Ben & Jerry's or maybe one of each. I can't remember. I like to switch it up back then. And I was about to cover them with other trash from inside the trash can, the kitchen trash can, to like kind of hide it. So there's already trash in there and you like stuff it way down towards the bottom and cover it up with some trash. And I realized that moment that I was like, wait a minute, this isn't normal. Like, what are you hiding this from? Why are you hiding this from, your wife and daughter who don't even care, that they don't even suspect anything. They don't think you have a problem. They know they know exactly how much ice cream you eat. It's never been a problem. They think it's just that you eat a lot of ice cream and that you're maybe a little bit stingy with it. But beyond that, it's just nobody cares except you. But you're feeling ashamed of what you're doing because there's this voice in your head that you're finally starting to listen to that says, this isn't normal. This isn't what a normal grown man does when he wants to eat the ice cream. Like he doesn't cover his tracks. He doesn't hide it. So I realized like there's like a metaphor there. There's like you see the addict on television or every movie or story, and especially like on Lifetime when they're trying to portray addiction, they always show somebody with an alcohol problem. They're like passed out next to a dumpster or shooting heroin in some back alley covered with trash, or there's some sort of trash receptacle in the vicinity to be your metaphor for you've reached rock bottom. And for me, it was like my own kitchen trash can. I was like, wait a second, this is stupid. I'm a grown man. I shouldn't be doing this. Something's wrong. And I think it's not just that I like to eat ice cream. It's that I can't say no and I can't stop it. And I'd been struggling with that for a while. And to be honest, that wasn't like the first time I'd ever hidden the ice cream in the trash. It was like probably the 20th or 30th time. But it was just that time when just one time I can remember. I can even picture the kitchen trash can, what it looks like. I have this perfect image of trash, unfortunately, that I get to live with. for the rest of my life, because that was the moment that I realized, like, wait a second, this isn't what I should be doing. And then I started to do a little bit more research on the sugar addiction stuff. I'd already been doing a ton of research on nutrition and all that for a long time. I was very interested in it. I was giving classes on it. I think we'll probably talk about that soon for my CrossFit gym. But why was this so difficult for me? That was the moment where it just kind of like all hit me.
So I know in your book you mentioned that you grew up with a history of being in sports, and I know that you were a former USA boxing coach. Do you think that this role of being an athlete played a relationship with self, body, and food growing up?
Yeah, particularly sports like wrestling and boxing. You have to be cognizant of your weight, but I wasn't like a person who cared about the number so much, but just that you have to be aware of it. With amateur boxing, it's different than the professional boxing. Like, you have to be in your weight class. If you're 1 pound over, that they're not going to let you fight. They might be able to make a fight for you if there's like another athlete that's at the same weight class or the higher weight class or whatever that you just got into, if they're available. Otherwise, that's it. Like, your day is over. Your tournament's over. Like, you didn't make weight. And they don't let you do like with professional, where at least back when I was competing, and this was 20 years ago now, because I was 23 when I stopped. You don't get to like weigh in the day before and then spend the next 24 hours like regaining the weight. That's what the athletes do now. They dehydrate like crazy, and then they rehydrate and eat food, and they put on a couple, like 10, 12 pounds before they go back into the ring. In amateur, you weigh in the week before or a couple of days before, depending on the tournament, and then you weigh in the day of again. So it's not really possible. And you may fight an hour from then, or you may fight like 6 or 7 hours from that weigh in, but you're pretty much locked into that weight class. They make it very, very, very strict to protect the athletes from, doing dumb stuff. But we did dumb stuff. Like, I remember specifically like running 10 miles one time before the Golden Gloves, spitting into a towel the whole time to dehydrate, just to lose a couple of pounds. And you see guys like just right before their fight, they'd be like, they'd be skipping rope for like an hour before their weigh-in, just nonstop, just trying to shed like 1 pound so that they could fight. I had people say really, really dumb stuff. At the gym that I coached at, I had a guy tell me one time that he just eats corn all that week to lose the weight, because it doesn't digest apparently, or you don't absorb it. I guess it all just comes out. I never tried that, but I thought that was hilarious. So yeah, it influenced me as far as body image and all that stuff goes. Yeah, I mean, you have to have a certain amount of vanity and a certain amount of hubris to say, I'm going to get in the ring and by myself, and I'm going to beat up this other person, and I'm going to win. I'm going to force my will onto them. And you either have that or you don't. And for good or bad, and I would never step into a boxing ring now. I'm older and wiser now, and the only thing better about back then, I was younger and cuter, and that was it. Now it's like, I think about it, like the vanity sort of helped me along the way, as far as like, being, having that argument with myself and freaking out about, like, oh, I'm finally starting to put, fat on or whatever, that kind of thing. But the hubris hurt me because I always thought I could just, kind of fight my way through it. So, I thought there were so many times where I would just, I'd yo-yo so much after I was in my mid-20s when I started actually having to worry about what I ate. And at that time, I don't think you guys may not know, or I might have mentioned this in a book, but I used to bartend in a gay bar with my shirt off. That was like my career through college. That's how I made money. And I loved it. It was great. But you really, if you're going to be facing a crowd of, hundreds and hundreds of people every weekend with your shirt off, you care about what you look like. And so when that was about, around 23 is when I started to have weight fluctuations and I had to worry about my diet. So I would panic, and I would, vanity, I would panic because I am, like, oh my God, I have to face all these people and I need to look cute or whatever. I mean, it's going to hurt my tips. Plus it just makes me feel, like my self-esteem goes down or whatever. And then, so I would, tighten things up, and I would diet really hard to, for what I knew how to do at the time, as far as diet goes. I didn't know anything about nutrition, but I would just eat less and, do whatever the bodybuilder type friends I had did. And then, but then the hubris would be, once I got the weight down again, I looked the way I wanted to look again, I would be like, oh, well, I'm fine. I can control this. I can handle this now. And the truth is, you can't do that. You can't keep, that's just a cycle that you get stuck in. And I didn't know that. It took me a decade to understand that I was just stuck in this cycle of, okay, I'm panicked. I'm going to, cut some of the weight off, and then I'm going to just go right back to eating the way that I was, or things would start to creep back into my diet. And it's just, it feels ugly after a while. You get really sick of yourself. And like my soul got, I guess, just really, beaten down by it, because, at some point you're just sick of yourself. You're like, why can't I just stop doing this? And, and then eventually I figured out that it wasn't, I was staring into a trash can. And I figured out it wasn't just, all about my willpower, and it wasn't about me. It was about something else. And I needed to deal with that. And I needed to face that demon in a very, in a very real way. So, and that's when I started writing The Sugar Demons.
Yeah, I could definitely relate when you were talking about, using the diet pills, the ephedrine, the caffeine, the energy drinks. Like I look back now and I see that was definitely a part of my story about keeping food addiction in check, or sugar addiction in check, so that I wouldn't eat because I wouldn't feel hungry, because I was used to always feeling hungry. And do you think that maybe those were some tools you used to kind of keep hunger at bay?
So if we're talking about the diet pills, yeah, that one is it definitely, I knew they were thermogenics because that's what they were marketed as. So I would take them, but honestly, that wasn't really about weight loss. That was, I have ADHD. And so for me to get through college, I started taking them in the mornings, to like get through class. And then I started taking them, like before workouts. And then I was taking them to go bartend at night. Like I was, at some point I was taking these pills, and they're, we call them ECAs is what they used to go by. It stands for ephedra, caffeine, and aspirin. And it does raise your metabolism a little bit. I was taking them like candy after a while. I mean, I'm talking about for years. And I got to the point where even after college, then I was just bartending and, working out and then going to work. And so instead of, taking them before class, I was taking them before work. And then I would take like, some pre-workout before going to the gym. And then I would take more pills that night to 10 bar. And sometimes I was chasing them with like a Red Bull. Like I would take like 2 or 3, hydroxycut or Ripped Fuel or, Lipodrenes, Enedrine, whatever they were back then. I took them all. And just because I just pick up whatever was at the store. I knew what it was. They're all the same ingredients essentially. And they're just under different brand names. So I would, I'd pop those. And then eventually, I think I was about 28 years old when I had my first major panic attack. And that was really, really it was shocking to me because I'd never experienced really panic before. I was in denial about it. I was like, I don't panic. I used to box people. I don't freak out about things for no reason. And the doctors were telling me, you're having a panic attack. And it took like 2 or 3 doctors before I finally started believing them. But the good thing that came out of that situation was that I started talking to people about what was happening to me. And I found all these other people, like just within like a day that I knew personally really well, that I worked with, that were like, oh yeah, it happens to me too. And I felt so much better. And I think that, that was a long time ago, long before the sugar, long before the sugar addiction was something that I faced, but it was just something that like I was able to remember and like realize like, oh no, there's a value in talking about what's going on with you. And there's a value in, sharing it with other people and hearing their stories. And that helped me a lot, I think.
Yeah. So that really just kind of, right, like it just fleshes out like really this foundation that you're kind of working from then when you start writing these pieces. And I think I've read some of your blog posts and I think somewhere too, you said that the book kind of started with this initial blog post that then kind of had, traction, that kind of thing. And if I'm understanding correctly, you are in the CrossFit world now, you're a trainer in the CrossFit world now. And so having that foundation, having that life experience, has that changed the nutrition information that you then kind of share with the clients that you work with?
Yes. So CrossFit completely changed my understanding of nutrition, because before that I was, it was like, I was into the bro science stuff, the guys that I worked out with at the gym, the guys I saw in boxing, the ones that told me to eat corn, there was no real understanding of nutrition. I just thought there was sort of. So, and it's not because of CrossFit specifically. I love CrossFit, but it was really like back in 2009 when I joined CrossFit for the first time as an athlete. There were 2 things that I remember being really popular with the community. And one was those god-awful Vibram 5 fingers, those toe shoes. And the other thing was the paleo diet. And the paleo diet, that's when I got my first taste of like, wait a minute, there's this other whole concept of nutrition other than, calories in, calories out, or, you're either skinny or you're hungry, as I guess Gary Taubes would say. I started just devouring like the Paleo Solution podcast from Rob Wolf and Greg Everett. And then I read his book, and then I read, Dallas and Melissa Hartwig's book, and then I read, I pretty much every paleo book that's out there, Mark Sisson, John Durant, like all of those people. I read all of their books. And then I read, Dr. Michael and Mary Eads Protein Power Life Plan. So I was just like, I'm talking about like dozens of books on nutrition. And so I just like sort of became, just because I was so interested, I was so, just focused on it. I learned so much, and I was able to help other people. So then at some point they had me, teaching the nutrition classes at CrossFit, and I was working one-on-one with people. To be clear, I don't have clients so much now. I'm a school teacher. I'm too busy to do all that stuff. I just help people for free that I work with. So like all my coworkers, during the pandemic, my principal made me like the corporate wellness person essentially for the school. And I just was, Zooming with people and helping them with their diets and stuff. And that's all I do. And I don't charge money for it. It's just something that, I have the time to do it. I can help people, for free. But if it becomes like a job for me where I'm like in collecting money and all that, I really don't enjoy it as much. So it's more fun for me to do it as a hobby and just to help people that I know than it would be to work with clients. Maybe I will someday. Honestly, I doubt it. I'd rather just focus on writing and, and teaching.
Do you feel like that athletic culture you talked about before, where, it's a matter of getting down to a certain weight, so maybe restriction for a certain period, and then this may have led to like binge eating disorder? I've heard this story a bit before from clients I've worked with in terms of like bikini models or, anyone who has to have a bit of vanity involved in their sport. Do you think this culture can be detrimental to those struggling with food addiction or sugar addiction? Even, you need to fuel 8 times a day and you're drinking a ton of Gatorade and all these things. Like, do you think these things play into sugar and food addiction in the athletic culture?
Yeah, absolutely. They do. If you have the wrong coaches and the wrong influences, they definitely are. We know so much more now about how to feed athletes, how to fuel athletes, how to eat for competition, all of that stuff. Bodybuilding culture is a little bit different because you have to basically starve yourself. I did do one bodybuilding show one time, and it was the worst 12 weeks of my life to cut for that. But it's something that you can teach it if you're doing it right. But if you're just coaching athletes to eat a whole bunch, or just telling them replenish with whatever carbs you can, they don't have to be good carbs necessarily. They can just be like you said, Gatorade and sugary stuff, whatever. Yeah, I see that a lot I even still see it in CrossFit, just people who don't know any better, and you try to talk to them about it, but they think that chocolate milk is something that you have after a workout because you need to replenish your carbs, and it's so unnecessary. But at the CrossFit gym that I work at, we're very big on nutrition, and it's not me. It's the owner and the other coaches there. It's really good, but you got to get people interested, and you got to meet them where they're at. And it's unfortunate, but like everything around them, everything that they've been taught, and up until the point that they get to us, is usually just wrong. Just plain wrong. Like you don't have a metabolic window where you can eat whatever you want for 2 hours after you work out. That's just asking for trouble. You don't have cheat days where you can go crazy. I can tell you that I was actually writing a blog post about it right now because you asked me about my aha moment, and I've talked about it before, but I haven't told the whole long story, and I can't do it here on this podcast. But a part of that story, I'll tell you, is that I had a guy live on my couch for about 6 months who was a bodybuilder friend. And he and that was when I started doing these epic cheat days, because that's what he did. So we were like eating really clean all week long, and then on Sunday we had these just ridiculous cheat days where you would stop off. You'd start the morning doing the paradise pancakes at IHOP or whatever, where it's like unlimited. And then we'd grab a couple, like a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts on the way home. And then you'd have like Mexican food or burgers and fries with shakes for lunch. And then for dinner, we'd each kill like a pizza, one large pizza each. And then we'd have ice cream after. It was planned debauchery is essentially what it was. And I think back to that time and I didn't look bad. I was doing all right. I was doing okay, but I was like developing this weird eating disorder essentially where I was like white knuckling it for, 6 days at a time. And then I was just going nuts. And I see the same thing happen in CrossFit gyms when you have a bunch of people do a whole 30. And I have nothing against the whole 30. I think it's awesome. It'll get you out of your sugar addiction. You can then just, maintain something, sort of like that. But, the whole idea that this is something that the whole idea of just diet, like people think that they want to lose weight. They go on a diet, right? Which is fine. But why do most people fail at their diet? We've got like a huge percentage of people right now. It's just after New Year's. They're all starting diets right now. And like 90% of them are probably going to fall flat on their faces by now already. I should just look at my watch. Like right now, they're already failing at it. Somebody's cheating on their diet right now. And, they're not asking themselves, why? Because this shouldn't be that hard. It's not the diet that's hard. It's the addiction. We're not treating the right thing. We're saying if you want to lose weight, you have to diet. Well, that's true. You have to change your diet to a certain extent. That is true. Absolutely. But you're not going to be able to get there if you don't deal with the underlying addiction first. And once we can teach people how to do that, and we can talk to them without offending them, that's the other thing, trying to get people to address it. That's really tough. I found that to be difficult just talking with, friends and clients, they're all in denial, but once you can do that, everything else becomes easy. And then the weight comes off as a side effect of dealing with your addiction, just like it came on as a side effect of dealing with your addiction. So sorry, I got long-winded. You can easily just
not at all
make that cutting motion to
no, it's great. So certainly then, in your book and in your workbook, you talk about, that people should cut all forms of sugar, including alcohol. And, it's kind of a two-part question. Why do you think that's so important for food or sugar addicts to do? And do people ever balk at that?
Yeah. So anything you say about sugar, you can say about alcohol and vice versa. I mean, they're essentially the same drug to me. I mean, other than outside of like intoxicated driving, the sugar addiction, sugar and alcohol will kill you in pretty much the same way. They both kill you via metabolic disease. They both give you fatty liver. They're essentially, they're feeding the same pathway, the same dopamine reward pathway, the exact same one that, that's the same as your sugar addiction. So, I think you can probably get off of alcohol addiction and still be eating sugar, but I don't think that you can eat sugar or get off sugar addiction and still drink alcohol, because you're just going to give yourself more cravings later on. Whereas you can, alcohol is a little bit different in that, if you don't crave alcohol anymore, then that doesn't necessarily mean that or if you don't drink alcohol anymore, you won't crave it, but that doesn't mean you're not going to crave sugar. And you see it a lot with AA, like a lot of the people who, they get in their recovery programs and they do really well with alcohol addiction. They all sort of become, addicted to cookies and donuts and, sugary coffee at the meetings and all that. And that's fine. They're probably saving their lives in the short term. But then you got to deal with that other thing too. And that's the sugar addiction. So yeah, I don't think but to answer that, I don't think it's good. I don't think the clients should be drinking alcohol. It should be considered, and it's in my book, considered sugar. I put it in there as, hey, this is sugar too. It's the same thing. It's identical to a processed carbohydrate.
So when they push back, like if you get feedback on the book, or like when you're just giving this free advice that you like to give and they push back, do you explain it just like that? Listen, this is liquid sugar and I see it as the same thing, or do you approach it differently?
Yeah, I try to be as gentle as possible. I've gotten better over the years. I used to be real preachy, when I was like new to it and figuring it out and, like learning about it and learning about myself. And I wanted everybody to know, and I thought I had all the answers. But you can't approach people like that. But, you also learn that there's two kinds of people. There's just, the people that are sick of themselves like I was, and they're just ready to not be in that place anymore. And they don't balk at anything. They're ready to make a change. They'll change everything in their diet, and they may not be super successful right away. They're still going to have relapses. They're still going to make mistakes, but they're ready to really start changing. And then you've got the people who just aren't there yet, and they're going to balk at anything because they want any excuse they can to just keep on doing what they're doing, because that's the addiction, that they're not in that place yet. They haven't hit rock bottom. They're not staring into their kitchen trash can yet.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, definitely what you're speaking to is what we know as addiction transfer or addiction interaction disorder when you're talking about, the people who go off alcohol and switch to sugar. And sometimes you go off sugar and you switch to shopping or relationships or gaming or, screen time, whatever that may be. So it's definitely something that we have to approach gently when we're working with individuals in terms of allowing them to see how it's happening more. And it's that dopamine reward pathway that you spoke to that they're seeking a quick fix from. So we have read that you estimate about 1 in 3 Americans are suffering with sugar addiction. If you could plant a seed for anyone who may not be aware they're dealing with the sugar demons, what would you say?
I would say to them, if you're struggling with staying on your diet, if eating clean is hard for you, then you need to ask yourself the question, why is this so hard? That is the big question, because it's not supposed to be. It's not because Oreos are amazing. They're not. Okay, they're really not. I have eaten all of them. I can tell you, I've sat down and eaten the entire 36 Oreos that it comes in a regular standard pack, the entire 48 that comes in a family pack. Trust me, I know. It's not that they're amazing. I've sat there and ate them because they're really, really good at producing a dopamine response. That's really what it is. And that's what you're chasing. It's not that if you can't picture your life without it, I remember being at a point where I was like, well, I can't picture my life without ice cream. It's really it's not that. I mean, your life is honestly so much better without those things. And once you have control of it, your life is just better, period. It's so much better than, a piece of processed food. So, it would just be that, you got to ask yourself and be honest with yourself about, why is this difficult for you? It should be easy. It's just food.
Absolutely. So then that brings up, and you kind of already answered this question, but I'm going to ask it in a different way, maybe dive a little deeper is, you recently released the workbook. You've had the book out for a little while. You have the Facebook group. Do you end up ever coaching some of those individuals through, getting off the sugar or anything like that? And if you do, what approach do you take?
Well, so anybody who contacts me, really, I try to help. If somebody is, reaching out to me over Facebook or Twitter or something, I'll give them some advice. I'm not just hey, go buy my book. I will talk with them usually. I hope I don't get a million friend requests now of people that, want me to help them through this. But, my system's pretty basic because I'm not some genius. I just sort of, came up with this, way to keep myself from falling down so much. And, but if I was going to, work with somebody, I would just take them through the process that, I took myself through, which is just, one, track your cravings. They're not as random as you think they are. They are very, very predictable for the most part. There's always a trigger associated with them, and you can really easily backtrack and find that stuff out. And then, the second part is, you need to have a plan for your cravings. Once you can track them, when they're going to show up, just have a plan built around them. And then after that, it's just all about controlling your food environment. And, your food environment is just the landscape of food choices that you have around you on any given moment. So I'm at home right now, down the street, there's a couple fast food restaurants. There's a grocery store. There's a few things, and there's what I have here at home. And, you have to remember that you're human and you're always going to follow the path of least resistance. So if the path of least resistance is right there next to you in your home, then that's the best option. If you have to travel and go out somewhere for lunch, from work or whatever, don't think in your head, I spent so many mornings where I would eat a good breakfast. I'm pretty good at breakfast, even when I wasn't, doing well with sugar. Breakfast was always easy for me. And then I would just tell myself, I would be like, yeah, well, so for lunch, I'll just go off to, this barbecue restaurant and I'll get some, grilled chicken or whatever, and maybe a salad. And then, but then work is stressful, and, a couple of things happen before before the day that stress you out, and you have, some deadline or something that has to get done. And then, it's lunchtime and you're like, oh my God, thank God. And then you get in your car and you're driving there, and then there's traffic, and that's even more stressful, and you're on a time limit now and you got to get back to work. So by the time you get there, all that willpower and strength that you had is just more like, no, just, I'm so stressed. Just give me, instead of, grilled chicken or whatever, you're ordering, a whole rack of, barbecued ribs with, sweet barbecue sauce on it, and, or maybe you're doing like some loaded baked potato with, just a bunch of stuff on there that you don't need, or you do what I did all the time, which was you end up in a drive-through of a fast food restaurant, and you end up with a burger and a shake. When I totally said I was going to go somewhere else that morning, it's like the path of least resistance changes throughout the day. So, you really need to control that food environment, and not trust yourself, because you can't trust yourself. If there's anything I've learned, it's like, just don't rely on willpower. It's not there for you. It's very finite. And so you still have to use a little bit of willpower to, stay home and eat what you're supposed to, or, prepare for your cravings like you're supposed to, but you can't rely on it for those big moments when you're stressed, because it's going to come at you at that time. You've got to be ready.
Yeah, and I think you touch on this for sure when you start talking about your method of AIM and some ways that people can implement these things into their recovery. So, could you share with us what are the principles of AIM, and, how people at home can implement these strategies in their life?
Yeah, well, AIM, I came up with that for the portion after you reach what I call the promised land, which the promised land is like the first, 15, 20 days where you're just kind of struggling to get out of the real strong craving phase. And then once you're out of that phase, it's all about maintaining that, being able to stay where the cravings are real quiet, the sugar demons sort of, they get quieter, they get smaller, or whatever you want to call it. But then, it's not like your disease just went away. It's just quieter now, and it's more manageable. Willpower actually works now a little bit better at this point. So you're cruising. But here's the thing: once you get into that area, and it took me a while, because I relapsed a bunch of times while I was figuring this stuff out, and I was sorting this stuff out over the 2-year process of writing this. A lot of times, even when you're stronger like that, when you're in that good place, the sugar demons always come, even to this day, when I get like a moment to breathe. Like when I get that moment to, like, I get home from work, it's been a long day. I get to sit down on the couch. I'm like, oh, okay, I can breathe now, and I can watch Netflix or whatever. And I immediately want to get something to, like to snack on or something. That's when it just comes back. And so the AIM principle was just like, here, just need to organize your life a little bit, because you can't have too much of that downtime necessarily, so you need some activity in your life, something to kind of be passionate about to keep you going. And the activity is the first, the first part of the acronym, AIM, AIM. So A is for activity. It doesn't have to be physical activity. Obviously, I tend towards that because of CrossFit and stuff. But anything that gets you interested, anything that, that you're, any hobby that you like doing, it has to be something that you enjoy. That could be photography, that could be, walking your dogs, that could be, volunteer work, whatever. It's just something that you do that, you can put there. So you make sure you do it every day, or, at least a little bit of, it every day if you can. And then the isolation avoidance, that's just really important, because you need accountability in your life. And, so you need the people around you. Getting isolated is just asking your sugar demons to talk to you. That's all it is, So I know it's really hard over the pandemic. So I made it a point to reach out to a couple people, just to text them and call them, be like, hey, how you doing? Check on them. I'm really bad about that. I'm an introvert by nature. So I have to, like, make myself contact my friends. I'm that friend that, like, you can always just call and we can talk to, like, we're still good. Even if we haven't talked for like 2 years, it's fine. But I shouldn't really go that long without talking to those people. But I can easily do that. So I have to force myself to, to not be isolated. And also, I was reading Johann Hari's Chasing the Scream at the time when I was writing this, and a fabulous book, by the way. I mean, I can't recommend it enough. And he said his best line was, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. When you're disconnected from people, that's why you have all these problems. It gets to the deeper root of the problem. We don't have a sugar addiction because we just, we got addicted chemically to the sugar. We have a sugar addiction because we had something that was missing inside of us, some disconnection from the other people around us or in our lives that was hurting us. And so we started filling that hole with sugar or whatever drug, of your choice. And then we got chemically addicted. So, you've got to, make sure that you're maintaining those relationships in your life. And just, sometimes you've got to schedule that. Sometimes you've got to just write in your journal or whatever that you need to keep you occupied, to keep you on task or focused, contact so-and-so today. at least once a week, call somebody, whatever, hopefully more than that. But yeah, so that's isolation avoidance part of it. And then mindfulness is just, I think it's really important period nowadays. We're just constantly distracted. We're constantly filling that dopamine, or we're constantly soothing that dopamine pathway with, Netflix, video games, what else? Our phones, it's not one addiction. It's so many. And so mindfulness is a dopamine deprivation state. And that's what you need to at least, give you some strength to long term, to so you don't just fall into all these addictions. I'm going to name another person's book, and this one's funny. The comedian Russell Brand. He wrote an amazing book called Freedom from Our Addictions, and and first of all, he's hilarious, and he writes, I'm so jealous, he writes like better than you could even imagine. And but it's not just about one thing. It's about, once you get past the sugar stuff and you're in the promised land after those 3 weeks, let's get to what this is all about, because something's going to go in and fill that addiction no matter what. You're going to want to, hammer that dopamine pathway. You're just drawn to it. It's natural. It's who you are. Your brain, that's your brain working correctly. It's going for the stuff that gives you dopamine because that's a survival mechanism. So if you're addicted to something, it's not because your brain is working incorrectly. It's because your brain's working the way it's supposed to. So you have to manage that now in an environment where dopamine has become extremely easy to get. Dopamine is cheap now, and but you can, dopamine's cheap, but it's kind of coming at the expense of other things in your life that are going to make you happy. So you've got to give yourself some dopamine deprivation states to, kind of combat that, so you're not so constantly addicted. You don't always have to be seeking something. And that's what it is, you can learn to not be seeking something all the time and learn to be in the moment. And that's where that comes in. And it's people talk about mindfulness, and, I heard it for the longest time, and I thought it was just so like eye rolling kind of thing. I'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm not going to meditate, dude. But now I realize like how important it is, because it's fixing your operating system. And that's super, super important. Otherwise if all you practice is constantly seeking distraction, then that's all you're ever going to be able to do. And mindfulness teaches you to not be doing that, to teach you to be in the moment and to be aware of what's going on in that moment, and just to be okay to be quiet and be in that moment, in that conversation, giving that person or that student your 100% full attention, your partner, whatever, like to be able to be there with them in the moment. And, I found that very, very difficult to do while I was addicted to sugar. And I still struggle with it. My wife will tell you. It's not always easy to be, in the moment with somebody 100% of the time, but I try, and, I got to get better at it. And the mindfulness really helps with that. So any kind of, any kind of meditation where you're just, you're focusing on sort of just watching your thoughts go by. I don't have a specific one I subscribe to. I use the Headspace app. That's a good one for me. I don't have to think about it. It teaches you. It's real easy. I just noticed that Netflix has a Headspace show now that teaches you how to meditate. So there's no excuse now. You can get it at pretty much any way. So if you don't know how to do it, there's free stuff online. Netflix has something now. You can pay for Headspace, but it's something you should definitely get into your life, and sooner rather than later. Get over the sugar addiction for sure. That's step one. But start a meditation practice. It definitely helps you out a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously our listeners can't see us, but Clarissa and I are like emphatically just nodding our heads at everything you have to say, because, you're right on the money. Everything you're saying are things that we've said to our clients along the way. And it's just always nice to have it from another person, another perspective, and to know that, you're another voice out there, like spreading the message that these are very important things. And speaking of importance, in your book, you mention like one of the steps that you talk about is recruiting allies. And you even emphasize, readers, you must not skip this step. So Can you speak more to the importance of this and why you're like, yeah, do not skip this?
Yeah, but because it goes to the isolation avoidance thing. But early on, that's part of the super better chapter. And unfortunately, that's the chapter that I get like, I got like a bad review because of it, when I thought that it was like, I think it's really important, but, people thought it was woo-woo. but it's really, I was just taking, some stuff I learned from Jay McDonegal's Super Better, which is, kind of gamifying this fight that you're having, this addiction recovery thing. And part of it was to recruit allies. Part of her advice was to recruit allies. And, that's a great idea. Like you said, there's value in talking to people about what you're going through, people that you trust. There's a good chance that they're going through it too. So a very good chance if it's sugar addiction. And then, there's some accountability there. You can talk to them. Letting other people know also forces you a little bit to be, on the spot, to, not want to fail, because then you feel like you're failing other people. And then, again, it's, you're forming more of a connection with somebody because you're telling them that, you're sharing something with them that's very personal, and it just builds a stronger connection. So I think it's very valuable to do that. It's not always easy. Depends on, you got to definitely pick the right people, because some people, they might make fun of you, or they might. I've found with sugar addiction especially, people get really defensive around me because they're like, it sort of like holds up a mirror to what they're going through. And, I assure them like I'm not judging. I don't do that. I don't even really, I just talk about me. I don't say anything to them about, their situation, but they just automatically start volunteering, well, I need to get off sugar too, but I'm not an addict, or they get real, there's like a dissonance there. And, you just want to pick that friend of yours that you can share it with, that's not going to get defensive and that's going to just be supportive. So that definitely, you don't want to skip that step, but you got to pick the right people too.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that that's so important. And we're part of a huge Facebook group that has, over 12,000 individuals struggling with food addiction, sugar addiction. And I think a lot of people can find their allies in that. And of course, like in the recovery world, there's the 12-step groups, and a lot of people find their connection and their people in there too. So I couldn't agree more that having the right allies is so important for your recovery. Now, what do you think are some of the mistakes that some people make when trying to follow your map to conquering sugar addiction?
Right. So I think the first one, in the first phase, the tracking phase, where I tell people to keep track of their cravings. The one thing is, people need to remember that weekend cravings are different than cravings you have during the week when you're more scheduled, and they happen for different reasons. And some people just want to rush into, making their plan and fighting their sugar addiction, and that's fine. But you really, really need to keep track of when these cravings are happening and why. Then you can do that as you go. Also, it's fine. It's your recovery. You do it how you want to. But if you skip it, and you then all of a sudden, the weekend comes and you end up eating food that you shouldn't be eating. You end up eating sugar. Then it's because you didn't prepare for that. So a lot of people, they'll kind of rush into it and they'll skip maybe the tracking phase and not realize how important that is. I've seen that before. The other thing I can think of is just the it's the thing that everybody struggles with when, they create a plan, but then they don't really follow through with it. You've got to meal prep, you've got to do, whatever you have to be prepared for. And, sometimes life just gets in the way and they don't do it, or they don't get to that phase. I guess, I do just think of one now is that, that's going to happen occasionally from time to time, or it may happen in the beginning. That doesn't mean it didn't work for you and you have to give up. Relapse is going to happen. I don't know how many times I yo-yoed and relapsed and all that through the whole process, but, I just kind of kept at it. And, now it's been, I guess, going on 5 years where I've been in complete control of it. So, you might bounce around for, a year or so. It depends on your level of addiction, I guess. I know everybody's is different, but don't give up too early. Make sure you follow through with all the tracking, and make sure you follow the steps and actually be prepared to control your food environment. Because if you don't, then there's no way to. You're going to be stuck with willpower, and that doesn't work, and it hasn't worked. So
Absolutely. I think you're right on the money. I think we see the same things with the people that we work with. Like if there's going to be some sort of trip up, it's going to be in those areas. And then when it's so early on, and then we like slash the other 3 tires because one went flat, and just give up, and I'll start again Monday, or I'll start again next year, whatever that might be. So what do you think our listeners can do right now today that would be beneficial to their sugar addiction or fighting their sugar demons, being in recovery? Like, what can they do today at home right now? They're listening to us, that kind of thing. What would be your advice?
I mean, I always start with the first thing, just track your cravings. That's the main thing. That, because even if that's all you do, then you at least learned something about yourself. You learned that, okay, I am a creature of habit. I form patterns just like other people do, just like every, other creature on the planet does. You learn something, that's valuable. You really do get something out of it, I would say. So that would be my main thing, is just, track your cravings and see what you find out about yourself.
Now, you recently released a Sugar Demons workbook, and I think this would be beneficial to the listeners to help track their cravings. But how else do our listeners find you and the materials you've created?
Okay, so the only place you can get the books is on Amazon. So Amazon.com and pretty much every country, but it's only in English, unfortunately. So if you're an English speaker in pretty much any country that Amazon serves, you can get it on Amazon.com. Both the books, The Sugar Demons, An Addict's Guide to Conquering Sugar Addiction, which is the book I wrote. It does have the two main benefits of that book are, one, it's short, and two, it's not boring. So you can pick that one up, and then the other workbook is just the base, just what you need to do. Here's the points, 1, 2, and 3. Here's how you get through it. And also on Amazon.com. And then as far as like just finding me on social media, I am on Twitter at jmoneycranford. That is at jmoneycranford. And then I am on Instagram, which is at crandiva, CRANDIVA. So Instagram at crandiva. And then we do have a group online called, I think our Facebook group is called the Sugar Demons, Sugar Addiction Group, Kill the Sugar Demons is it. So if you look for just Sugar Addiction Group, Kill the Sugar Demons, you can join us on there. And that's where you find me.
Thank you. Okay, so it's time for our signature question. If you could tell a younger version of yourself something about sugar demons or sugar addiction recovery, what would it be?
So my younger self, I tell myself the same thing I tell everybody who's struggling, which is, this isn't about willpower. You're not weak or morally flawed just because you can't say no to sugar. This is a math problem. Like, you need to organize your life in such a way that you rely on willpower as little as possible for X amount of days until the sugar demons go quiet and you're back in the driver's seat. That's exactly what I would tell myself. And I wish I could do it 20 years ago, so I didn't have to yo-yo for over a decade. But that's what I'm telling everybody now, and I hope they listen and hope it does them some good.
Thank you so much, Johnathan. That's an amazing answer to that question, and we're so grateful for you to have come on the show today. And we look forward to meeting your dog after the show.
Okay. Yeah, I can go out. My wife just came home, so I can.
Yeah. Let's see.
The catcher.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us this week on Food Junkies, Recovery from Food Addiction. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Sugar Free for Life support group, I'm Sweet Enough. You can subscribe to our show in iTunes or Stitchers. That way you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Dr. Tarman's book, Food Junkies, which is available on Amazon. If you have any additional questions, both Molly and Clarissa are food addiction professionals and work one-on-one with clients. You can find their websites and email addresses in the show notes. Be sure to tune in every Friday when our new episodes drop. As Vera loves to say, the power is ours.